Hello and welcome to the Design Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Chris Whyte, and in this podcast series, we explore the journeys of founders and leaders from the world of physical product design. In today's episode, I'm joined by William Gordon, an award-winning, people-centric industrial designer with over 20 years' experience spanning corporate environments, startups, and non-profits. William studied industrial design at Pratt Institute before joining Kohler as an industrial designer. Since then, he's also worked for Fax Design, SC Johnson Wax, CamelBak, and today William is Vice President of Design at Blendjet, a company known for its portable blender, which has sold well over 10 million units. William's passionate about design, particularly when it facilitates relationships between people. In preparing for today's episode, he told me that design is fundamentally about people and the interactions that objects enable. His focus on product design, the design process, and user research has deepened his understanding of the importance of people in design. We'll dive into this and more on today's episode. So that just leaves me to say, William, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Chris.
You're very welcome. So I did all right there, didn't I? In terms of,
I think you did.
Stumbling
you did
too
much.
much.
Not too many. Yeah.
So we could, I'd say we could edit some of that out post, but when I do that, it really messes with the background.
You have a future as a voiceover artist. They could turn you into an AI voice. It'd be great.
Well, to be fair, if they can do that, then it saves me recording a lot.
I know. Wouldn't that be great? I think someone's working on that app right now. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I may. I don't think there's a lot of voiceover artists that listen to this podcast, but I may have annoyed a few with that flippant comment there. But it's kind of to say. But it's really good to have you on the show. We've been speaking for a little while now, haven't we? And it's good things come to those who wait. So, as we do always on this show, we'll rewind time, go right back to the beginning. So, why don't you start us off with Pratt Institute and kind of what got you into industrial design in the first place, William?
Yeah, I feel like I have always wanted to be an industrial designer, even before I didn't know what it was. You know, I kind of feel like as a kid playing, I was always making and designing things in a sense, whether it was Legos or plastic model kits or drawing cars or drawing airplanes. And then my mom found an article about Art Center College in some magazine. And I learned that you could do this as a job. And it just sparked my imagination, the idea of being able to kind of be a professional inventor, to be able to, create a car, create an airplane, create whatever. Well, when I was 10 years old, that was just the coolest thing in the world. And I never looked back. I kind of was focused in an unusual way on industrial design as a path. And it's been great. I mean, I really feel like, I can create a world as an industrial designer, which is just a very special thing, to be able to touch people's lives around the world with the things that I've created, to have those things be in people's lives for years and almost be an anonymous part of their life. To me, that's very special. And as you mentioned, my philosophy on design has evolved to really focus on the relationships people have with each other and how designed objects facilitate those relationships, and how my work as a designer really is about facilitating positive relationships of people in the world. And that to me is really something I don't think I ever would have anticipated as a 10-year-old, but it's kind of how my mature self has evolved to love design at a whole new.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Just that perspective on it as well, kind of how your view on what industrial design is and I guess the why has kind of evolved over time from that kind of 10-year-old vision of kind of maybe sketching and pretty pictures through to what it means to you now.
Yeah. so as you just said, it was like drawing a cool car, or drawing, some sort of beautiful object, or creating something sculptural. And that's, when I went to Pratt, it was very much, I would say, an art-based approach to industrial design. And as I've become older, I've realized that's kind of an old school approach to industrial design. I still think it is extremely informative to all the ideas of design being about people, because to me, aesthetics, that is fundamentally about appeal and about our sort of animal appeal of an object, or a system, or an experience is still fundamentally an aesthetic drive. And so that was very informative to me, and what I was really passionate about when I first started industrial design was the making, and really the product aspect of that. And so when I started my career at Kohler is a company that has a very deep design history and is very into the details of design, into the materiality, into the manufacturing, into the aesthetics. And so it was a great sort of almost like postgraduate working there, being able to work at a company where the factory is literally below your desk, where the CEO does a design review with you every month, and is interested in every millimeter. It was a great education in terms of that old school industrial design I talked about, but then also connecting it to the people-centric aspect of it, of how do you create a brand? What is a brand? What is that storytelling that we do as designers? Because the other kind of philosophy I have on design, and this is what is really the cornerstone of how I teach design, is understanding that designers are storytellers. We don't make anything. We make stories, right? And those stories are compelling enough that someone wants to invest money, or someone wants to produce it. But fundamentally, it's a story. Even a technical drawing is a story. And so when you understand that, and you understand what your job is as a designer is to create a compelling story, you understand that is about connecting people, because it's about connecting people to the ideas in your head. And I think that's magical.
Yeah, really is. And I can feel the passion kind of coming through when you're talking about it as well. It's absolutely wonderful. So talk to me about your time at Kohler then, because Kohler is a big brand. We've got Kohler's in the UK. I've worked with Kohler Myra previously. Obviously, and that's a big outfit in itself. But am I right in thinking Kohler's got like its own village, is it, or a town?
Yeah, it's a fascinating place. So I moved from Brooklyn to this small town in Wisconsin, Sheboygan, Wisconsin, and then Kohler is a even smaller town right next to Sheboygan. And it was literally named after the factory. They built a factory, and then they built a town around the factory, and then the people named it Kohler, of course. Yeah, and it's a planned community. The same people who planned Central Park planned the Kohler Village.
Oh, cool!
And is fascinating picture of sort of this Midwestern factory town, and it's very classic in that sense. And they've actually built a 5-star resort there out of the old dormitories for the factory workers from the turn of the last century. And so it's fascinating, like 5-star resort, championship golf courses, everything. And so the brand Kohler is a very exciting place to come as a designer, because design is kind of in every aspect of not only the product, but the culture of the company, and it's still a family-owned company. And the CEO, when I was there, Mr. Kohler, he's passed away this last year, but he, wanted to be a designer. And so, which is a pro and con when you have a client who kind of wants to be a designer, but he has great taste, and he, would as I said, he reviewed all of the new product every month. And so we, as a 22-year-old, got to present to this billionaire CEO and, have tons of crazy stories about all of the design reviews we had with them. And, so it was this tight community of designers, very talented designers from all over the world who moved to this small Midwestern town kind of in the middle of nowhere. And, you were very focused on your design. And, I still have a lot of colleagues who are still there, and they just do great stuff. I mean, if you look through the sort of the annals of Kohler, you'll find, all the best industrial design in the plumbing industry right there. And it's all done on the premises in Kohler. They use very little consulting outside. I mean, they have obviously different design groups with some of the subsidiary brands like Myra or Callista or various, Jacob Delafont or whatever. But they, it is, I think, a model of in-house design that is very special. And, when I was there was kind of, I think, the beginning of their sort of golden era of kind of what they're known for today, which is being a global design leader. And that was really started in kind of the early 2000s when I was there with a cohort of tremendous industrial designers.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I can't imagine that kind of setup happening these days, because it's
pretty hard. I mean, I think that they benefited greatly from, hiring international designers who wanted to come to the United States. And so, okay, we're going to sponsor you, but you got to come live in Wisconsin,
Yeah.
And so, or they hired, like me, they hired young, talented designers straight out of school who wanted to get their first job and were willing to move. It's much harder for them to hire, as you could imagine as a recruiter. It's much harder for them to hire mid-career designers who have already set themselves up in some other sort of urban environment or what have you. It's much harder for them to recruit those people to a rural environment. But it was a great experience. I mean, I got to pay off my student loans, and it was very cheap. And what was the best part about it, and this is what I tell my students, is move to the first job. Don't just stay, if you're going to school in San Francisco or New York or Chicago or whatever, move. Like, find the best job and move to that job. Don't stay in the urban environment just because you want to, you like the cool restaurants. Like, move. Because I was able to create, category leading products in my early 20s that were all mine. I wasn't the sketch monkey or the CAD monkey. I was the person who created it and launched it. And that's unusual to right out of the gate be able to do that type of product. And it's more unusual if you're at a design consultancy, right? If you're at a design consultancy, typically if you're a junior designer, you're not going to be working on those types of products. You're going to be an assistant.
Yeah.
So it is a special thing when you're able to find a company like that. And sometimes that means you have to move somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a conversation I have most weeks, to be honest with you. Location is one of the biggest barriers on both sides, really. For candidates, if they're, or designers, if you're kind of fixing yourself in a particular location, then there's only so many businesses within that area, or that are going to be willing to take you on remotely or hybrid. And the same for the employers. You've only got a certain geographical area where you can pull talent from. So, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but I've been in the same area kind of the majority of my life, and I'm pretty happy with how my life's turned out. But you could think how much differently it would have been had I been more open to relocation when I was younger.
And there is a very special thing about and this is an unusual part of Kohler, is they still have manufacturing in the United States, right? And so to be able to, as a designer, learn about manufacturing hands-on is unusual these days, right? You have to go to China typically or Asia to be able to do that. and it has shaped that learning of being, like literally making toilets, literally being, on a foundry line, and learning from the factory workers about these different production methods has deeply shaped me as a designer, right? And it shapes me in terms of how I interact with factories that are 10,000 miles away. And
that's brilliant.
So I think too, the idea, I mean, I'm preaching to young designers who might be listening, is, you really need to be learning a lot about the craft of interacting with not only your coworkers and people who aren't designers, that's a huge thing, but also learning how to interact with all of these vendors, because they're the hands that are creating your thing. And so it's a collaboration. You aren't making it, they're making it.
You've gone from obviously designing kind of basinware, toilets, so I'm presuming for Kohler, so ceramics. You spent a bit of time as so that's later on actually going to be a visiting instructor at Pratt Institute. But then immediately after Kohler, you joined Wax and design consultancy. So how was that transition for you?
I left Kohler and then I moved to the Philippines. And I started consulting in the Philippines. And then, because I had a big project through the Philippine government, through their Department of Trade and Industry, designing furniture and home accessories for a bunch of exporter factories there.
Oh, wow. How did that come about then?
It was kind of an amazing opportunity. I had wanted to do design in a developmental capacity, right? I wanted to get more connected to factories. I wanted to understand kind of on the ground what the factory world was like. As a designer, you're so dependent on factories, and so I really wanted to get a lot more intimate with my understanding of that. So I had a colleague who had done a similar project with the Philippine government, and Nick Patterson, who's a great industrial designer. And he connected me with this organization. It's called CITEM, and they're really fantastic organization out of Manila. And they're, Philippine government organization. They bring in designers to work with all of their factories. And so I worked with 16 different factories, designed I think it was 180 products in the 6-week period. It was an insanely compressed schedule, and I'm sort of flying all over the Philippines because they're all islands, and driving to all these remote sort of factories, and these are furniture, home accessory, and some of them are factories that produce for Design Within Reach, and some and Crate and Barrel and various other retailers like that, or they're smaller sort of mom and pop factories, from wood furniture, wood and leather furniture, to baskets, to everything, but all high design kind of, not handicraft in any way. And so it was a great experience. And then we launched all those products at a trade show in Manila, and that kind of launched my consulting career. So I moved back to the States and lived in Brooklyn, and then I lived in Chicago, consulting, and it was a pretty wide range of clients: consumer electronics, plumbing, furniture, kitchen accessories, textiles, a lot of decor stuff, kind of big wide range. And it was so I did that for about 5 years. It was really the Great Recession in 2009 that kind of curtailed my consulting. It was really kind of my first dose of reality in terms of my career.
You'd had a pretty wild ride up until that point, hadn't you?
Yeah, and it was a fantastic ride. And I was kind of what I realize now in hindsight, I was riding the wave of a really good economy, and, kind of post 9/11 economy. And, it wasn't until 2009 that things got rocky. And then I was like, oh, this is reality. Okay. This is a little bit more difficult, because it was, when you are hitting it on all cylinders as a consultant, you're kind of turning down work, and you have, more work than you can even do, but it's quite easy for all that work to go away, right? And so 2009 was a difficult year, and then that year decided to go back corporate and got a job at SC Johnson, which was another Wisconsin family-owned company, which it was kind of funny, ironic that I got another Wisconsin family-owned company, but it was another tremendous experience.
Yeah, wonderful. So, I think we're kind of going through a period in time now where there's going to be a lot of people, designers, that have, ridden the post-COVID kind of boom of 2020 to 22. And then all of a sudden in 23, the market's just bottomed out again. I think it was a very quick boom this time around, but it's a very, caught a lot of people by surprise, not just design consultancies, but recruiters as well. Like in 2022, the market was crazy. Everyone was hiring. Everyone was getting design projects, especially if you were in healthcare or consumer electronics or med tech. Like it was crazy. And then 2023 came along, and I was like, we've overhired or we've overacquired. There's consultancies were being bought left, right, and centre, and then you kind of get to the turn of this year, and there's just thousands of industrial designers, especially in the States, out of work. And it's like we were saying off air that there is hiring going on, but it's certainly a different landscape. So how did you get through that time then, or how did you kind of? Did it take you a while to recognize that?
I would say that for me, as I said, it was kind of my first comeuppance in my career. And I think I took it hard at first, right? And I took it very personally. And I think that to me is the trap you run into, especially creative people. Typically, they have a well-developed sense of imposter syndrome. I think most creative people do. Most people do, but creative people in particular, right? And, you really have to rely on your network. So I have a lecture that I gave my students. It's about professional development, and the sort of mantra of the lecture is always be connecting. That your career is about relationships. It's about developing and maintaining your network of relationships. And I always tell people, don't be an asshole, right? Because it's a small industry, and people, word gets around, and so that connecting with people is really, as I've moved through my career, moved through the crash of 2019, it was all about my network and being able to reach out to people, asking for help. I had luckily developed relationships with recruiters, like yourself, Chris, and through the, even when they didn't have positions available, was still talking with them, so that when the sort of green, I was first on their mind. And then the other thing too that I would say is, don't be snobby about an opportunity, right? I had to take a lot of consulting work with like kitchen accessory companies that were kind of not my favorite work. And I still have some products that I from that time that I look at and kind of makes me sort of cringe. It's funny, I have this one product it's still on the market and it's still selling. I mean, it's still like, and it's it's awful. It's just like, why did they produce that? Oh my god! But
someone
it's still
out there must not think it's as awful as you think.
I know. And so you go from these career highs where you're producing red dot, IDA awarded product, and then you gotta pay the bills. So you're like, okay, I'll design some schlock for a little bit, and that's below my sort of ideal, but that's what it took. And luckily I haven't had to go back to that since, but and I've been able to keep sort of riding the wave up. But it's important to understand that you're going to have a long career, and that hopefully, and that any long career has ups and downs and creative spells where you're not doing maybe what you want to do. But the other thing to do to me is to always, I always feel like designers, we don't have hobbies, we have other projects, but to always keep those other projects going too. Is that if your 9-to-5 job isn't sort of truly meeting all of your passions, you can, especially today, there's so many outlets to be able to create product and be able to do your own projects. And so your 9-to-5 doesn't have to be where you source all of your creative satisfaction.
Yeah. It's interesting. What you just said there as well, it's kind of reiterates what Leah Stewart said on a previous episode as well, because that was the advice she gave that she learned early on in her career. Just don't turn down kind of those projects that you might normally turn your nose up at, because like you say, it's a long career.
Especially if they're paying hourly.
Yeah,
paying hourly. Take it. Take it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because there is this in every good career. There are these times that are down, but I look back at those times as times that I focused on either other things, or maybe they were incubation times. Maybe I was learning a skill that I didn't have before. So there's always value, right? There's always value.
You never know who you're going to meet along the way.
100%. That's the other thing about the connections is, I been around long enough to see students of mine come back and, give me work. It is this amazing process of connection and relationship sort of development, and you never know where they're going to lead.
Do you have a like a process or any kind of techniques that you either practice yourself or you kind of you teach your students to help with building a network and maintaining those kind of starting and maintaining those relationships? I
mean, I think there's the basics of human interaction, right?
Yeah.
A lot of it is starts with that fundamentally, right? Obviously, LinkedIn is an incredible tool. If you as a professional or as a student are not on LinkedIn, you need to get on it. It's something I would say.
Are you frustrated by drawn-out recruitment processes, missing out on talent to your competition, or wasting time interviewing candidates who don't quite live up to their profile? Well, if you're the founder or leader of a physical technology brand or design consultancy, here's what we can do for you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Chris Whyte, host of this podcast and the founder of Kodu, a specialist recruitment consultancy focused exclusively on physical product development. By working closely with you and your team, Kodu will help you improve your entire experience of hiring. We'll make it easier to identify, attract, and ultimately hire the very best design and engineering talent ahead of or from your competition. You'll only interview candidates who fit the brief, and we'll work with you to ensure you get the outcome you want, and fast, typically in 6 weeks or less. We have a 100% fill rate, and we guarantee to get you a positive outcome. Simply put, if we don't deliver, you don't pay. But how can I make such a claim? Well, the short answer is I've been doing this for a very long time. Kodu is built from over a decade of my own personal experience hiring hundreds of designers, engineers, managers and leaders, over 95% of whom are still in post 12 months later. I've personally built an incredible network of thousands of professionals in the physical product design and engineering space covering the UK, US and Europe. And I've taken what I've learned over the years and put the best of that into Kodu. So if you'd like to spend less time stuck in a recruitment loop and more time doing what you love, get in touch. Email me, chris@teamkodu.com, or message me on LinkedIn. But that's enough from me. Let's get back to the show.
So in terms of relationships, I mean, I feel that it is, it's almost a design project where you are, creating these connections that are meaningful because you have either a common experience or an insightful conversation that you had that's memorable, a positive interaction, right? To me, that's how it starts, right? Some sort of positive interaction that is mutually beneficial or mutually interesting or what have you, whether it's at a trade show and you had a great conversation. Key to conversations is just asking questions and listening. That's it. If you can ask, I'm sure that's most of your professional career, Chris.
I hardly talk at all.
Yeah,
it's just ask a question, shut up.
Questions and you listen and you ask follow-ups, and it's miraculous when you do that to someone, especially in person. You make eye contact, and you laugh at their jokes or whatever. They love you and they want to interact with you more, and that's how it works. It's pretty straightforward, and I have you try to collect that goodwill, and when you've when you are at a company, what you learn is that, when you're at a company with good people, those people end up going other places. And then you now have connections with other people and you now have a network. And it's amazing how quickly that grows. It all, for me, starts with the cohort at school and then grows from there. I have, obviously, people that I studied with 25 years ago that I'm still, they were in Crete this last week and their family is growing. Oh my gosh, blah, 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 and that to me, beyond just developing your career, that's the heart and soul, of a career. There's a great quote from one of the patriarchs of the SC Johnson family, and he talks about the substance of what they do is the goodwill that they build. Everything else is shadow, and I absolutely believe that. Right, your project names and your projects you worked on with these people, you don't remember. Oh, what was that project name? Oh yeah, that thing. You remember the stories. You remember the trips you took. You remember the relationship you have with the person, and projects are kind of just in the background of that, and as it should be. It is never sacrifice a relationship for a project. Lots of designers are willing to do that. Believe me, I've seen it, where they're willing to throw a relationship under the bus for some aspect of a project, and it's never worth it. It's never worth it.
No, like you said before, the community is very small, and word gets around, doesn't it? It's I think I've always lived my professional life and my personal life. Just try and be as nice a person as you can, because it all works out.
It does, and the product, like I think that there, at least when I was growing up as a designer, there was this sort of thought that design to be a great designer, you needed to be this sort of kind of creative asshole, this sort of cheap Steve Jobs sort of person, and it's just not true. It's just not how the world works. It's not actually how things get done. And I think that idea hopefully doesn't. I don't think it exists as much in this new generation of Gen Z designers. But it's something I know as a young designer I had to learn was just not reality.
Yeah, there's not much space, is there, for that kind of personality? I mean, if you are that kind of Steve Jobs type kind of character, you better be bloody good, because otherwise people
Yes.
aren't going to follow you.
And there
Yeah,
aren't that, I mean, I've, believe me, worked with those types of designers, and nobody likes working with them. Like, they really don't. Like, they might have a great brand or whatever, but yeah, no. And the truth is, it isn't, they aren't the ones creating it. It's some nice person who works for them who's actually doing all the stuff. That's just the truth of it.
Yeah, and I think I don't know. Obviously, I'm not in that position, but it can't be a pleasant experience, because surely the people that work for you in that scenario, they're in it for the game, because they know that they're not doing it for the love of the person they're working for or the admiration. Maybe they respect them from a design point of view, but it's self-serving, isn't it? They're not with you on that journey. They're there to get the experience and then use that for somewhere elsewhere may value them or kind of be kinder to them. That's maybe a little
And
bit
it's
simplistic.
no way to live. I mean, I totally agree with you. It's no way to live. There's so many other environments you could go to that are positive. I've certainly worked with egotistical bosses and people who were maybe less than nice. And for me, I think I found that it doesn't move the ball forward. It is simply an artifact of some psychosis they have. It's not really like a truly productive element. To me, it's almost, they have all this talent, and that actually holds them back. If they had all that talent and were just nice, it would probably be even, be like, wow, they're really great.
Imagine the possibility. So we kind of went off on a.
Yeah, we went off some tangents.
It was a tangent, but it was almost planned, because we talked about it previously. But let's go back to kind of your career briefly, then we'll finish that story off. So SC Johnson Wax. So kind of household FMCG stuff. Is that right?
Yeah, a lot of consumer packaged goods, and it was interesting because I when I went there, I was recruited there. I didn't necessarily know what industrial design in that context was like, and it really, the experience exposed me to kind of many different new areas of industrial design that I hadn't really experienced, including strategic design, design thinking, which I knew a lot about, but it was kind of at a different level. And when you're an industrial designer at a company that big, when you're working on these platforms worth tens of millions of dollars, you're practicing industrial design in a very different way. You're getting very in depth with users. You are, going to their homes all over the world. You are, again, this storytelling thing. You are trying to understand these users, understand the way they actually live, and then be able to craft a story about that world that educates people to the reality and educates people in terms of how you're going to go after their unmet needs and their hopefully unarticulated needs. And so it is hardcore design thinking, and in that regard, it is about hypothesizing, prototyping, ethnographic research, and being able to then connect that to the manufacturing base and to the business model is, to me, kind of that magic of industrial design, where it is the connective tissue that connects the business to individuals. So it was a great experience to learn how to do that, because, a lot of the products are relatively humble or everyday, but you get air fresheners, Ziploc bags, or, mosquito repellents, or whatever, all these sort of like very everyday items. And you quickly understand how much goes into everything. how much goes into everything at the grocery store, everything that you see as a consumer has these deep well of research, deep well of development that has gone into it. And it was a tremendous experience because we also worked with all of the best industrial design agencies around the world. In fact, because as I said, I came to it right after the recession, there were many industrial design firms that would have gone out of business if it wasn't for SC Johnson investing as much as they did in new product development at that time. It was a very interesting time to be at SC Johnson.
Massively, yeah. It's interesting. I was listening to Atomic Habits earlier today. I was recommended by Ashley Syed to read that. So I've been listening to that and just got to the bit where it's all about habits, but all of the money and time and research into consumer habits and the dopamine rush that you get and the craving we get for things even like air fresheners, and the positioning of that on the store shelves as a big kind of play into our psyche. And it's so you're very close to that as an industrial designer, working with the science behind that, but also the user research. So it's there's a lot more to it than meets the eye, isn't there? It's not just a pretty
sensory
picture.
Science, right? So you have all of these people who are scientists and they're studying, whether it's olfactory senses or flavor senses or various senses and understanding that and relationship to preference. Obviously, the shelf is just I love going to a shelf at a store and kind of analyzing it and sort of saying, okay, this is how this packaging is working, and how it's attracting your eye and how it's sort of disrupting the shelf. And, because you have these patterns as a consumer and, you have a new product, you're trying to break those patterns, try to attract people. It's fascinating psychology. And that's really where I developed this idea of like, design is people. It's just people. It's just how appealing to people at all these different levels. Because you get to the psychology of what makes someone put a product in their shopping cart, and it is a very elaborate process.
Yeah, and companies spend a lot of money getting to that answer, don't they?
Yeah, and it's the research methodologies are fascinating. They use eye tracking for when people they'll have fake shelves and they can track people's eyes to see how their eyes dart about. They have fake grocery stores, like a whole grocery store, and then you have customers coming in and shopping, so you see that. As I said, I went into literally hundreds of homes around the world, understanding how people actually live with these products and at a really fundamental level. And
that's great.
Seeing different cultures and how they, for instance, air fresheners in Russia, it's all about, they have these let's say in Moscow, they have these sort of Soviet era blockhouses, and the only private space is the bathroom, and they go in there to smoke. So the air freshener's about smoke, dealing with this small room where they're smoking, and it's the only private space. So it's sort of fascinating.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is really interesting. It's you've certainly seen quite a few different things throughout your time. And so I'm just conscious of the time, and we're barely kind of halfway through your career here, I guess. But should we talk very briefly about CamelBak and Blendjet? Because CamelBak, am I right in thinking was that a startup when you joined them, or had that been going for some time?
CamelBak's been around for about 30 years, and they're outdoor company, very kind of iconic outdoor company, completely new category to me. That outdoor industry, they have a mix of hard goods and soft goods, and I had never done soft goods before, and these are highly technical soft goods, used by everyone from the military to ultra marathoners, and
so it's for putting water in it, isn't it? It's like a backpack that you have, like a
backpack that you have water, and so it could be for hiking, could be for running, could be for biking. And then they have water bottles and reservoirs and all sorts of accessories. So I came in as the director of industrial design, kind of overseeing the whole thing, and then really learned a tremendous amount about all of those categories. And, they sell, we developed a product for NASA. We have stuff for the military, as I said. And then, soccer moms and kind of everything between. So it's fascinating in terms of the breadth of product. And then also sort of the focus of hydration and carry and kind of the outdoor industry in general, which is a wonderful industry, and, passion for that industry. And it's oftentimes, as a designer, especially if you're a consultant, you might be designing products that you don't use yourself. So it's really great when you have the opportunity to design products that you are passionate about. And so, I use my products all the time, and that's really fun. Really, really fun.
Yeah, I mean, that's the the dream, really, isn't it? Next to kind of seeing your products on the shelf or being used by people, it's actually using it yourself. So
it's really fun. And we have drawers full of water bottles and everything else that I worked on, and it's a really fun. That was really, really fun.
That's awesome.
And it was a great experience. Great people. Again, broadening that relationship base to a whole new industry is also a tremendous opportunity too.
Massively, yeah. So you went from lead designer with SC Johnson Wax straight into director of industrial design with CamelBak.
Yep.
Yeah. So how did that kind of come about then? Because that's one of a big blocker for a lot of people I speak to is they're at that kind of that either senior designer or maybe design manager level, and they're looking for the next step up. But I find it very difficult to find an employer that will take a risk on someone who doesn't have, say, manager or director or head of experience, because it's a different job, especially jumping from senior to a management role. There's a big gap there in terms of what the job is. How did that come about for you?
Well, I was lucky enough at SC Johnson to have some direct reports as a lead.
Okay.
So that got me kind of wet behind the ears in terms of management. That was very helpful. I think teaching design was also, for me personally, very helpful, because I think I developed my management style through teaching, right?
Because you've taught throughout your career, haven't you?
Correct. I've taught at 3 different schools. I taught at Pratt, and I taught at School of the Art Institute of Chicago, and currently I teach at California College of the Arts. And when you teach, you have to know what you do. It's like whenever you feel like you teach someone how to drive stick shift, you have to kind of internally understand, well, how do I do this? And be able to translate that, right? And that's really helpful being a manager, because you then have to understand how different people process information. So different people process information, are motivated differently, are just wired differently. So you have to be able, as a professor, to be able to understand that with students, and then that's very helpful for managing designers, especially. Because designers are need to feel passionate, they need to feel motivated, they need to feel safe, they need to feed all these things for them to do good work. And so that was very helpful. I think I was lucky enough to find a hiring manager who sort of understood my value. Maybe I was good at communicating that value of not only having a hardcore industrial design background, but also understanding design process and understanding sort of how does an idea navigate itself through a corporate system, right? So managing design is about understanding the process of design. How do things come to fruition? Not just, I made a cool rendering or I made a great CAD model, but well, how does it work? How does
Yeah.
the idea, germinate? How does it, get funding? How does that
Hmm.
funding, stay through a 2-year development cycle? All of that type of stuff that's really, to me, beyond people management skills. Those are the skills you need to learn to be in design management,
Hmm.
is understanding the reality of a product development cycle, and being able to not only understand it, but be able to really like control it and drive it, and
Mm.
understand the bottlenecks and how to get over them. And that was a big part of what I sort of learned and was able to show through my previous experience, especially the experience at SC Johnson, that got me to director at CamelBak, and then VP at Blendjet.
And we're touching there in terms of, we spoke earlier as well about kind of maybe talking about broader design philosophy. Is that kind of what you're touching on there in terms of taking the whole wider kind of picture and the
Absolutely.
wider context?
For me, as I said, I like this is how I like to think about ideas, is try, what is the through line, right? This is what I do for my students or my own products, is how do I describe this in as few words as possible, right? The ultimate through line I look at is like BMW is the ultimate driving machine. You kind of understand everything you need to know about BMW through that one crisp statement. For me, I have my own sort of through line, which is product, process, people, right? So I can talk about my career with those 3 words. And, in terms of a philosophical understanding, everything ladders up to people, right? That's the whole point. That's the only reason you're doing any of this stuff, is for people. And you are connecting people through your product, and then there is a process behind that. There's a process of how that product is developed and produced and distributed. And so understanding all 3 of those elements is key to success, right? That's a key to design success. A design isn't just a product. It isn't just a process, but it's a connection to people. It's a relationship to people, right? And for me, that is why I'm always trying to learn. I'm always trying to learn about people, and I'm always trying to learn about a new product category. I'm always trying to learn about some new aspect of this process. When being at Blendjet, I've been learning about startup. This is a startup, and we've grown from when I started in 2020, it was just a relatively small startup, and now it's a 9-figure business. And being on that journey has educated me in so many ways about the reality of how hard it is to create a widget and then have millions of people want to buy that widget. It is incredibly difficult. And it's not just creating something cool. It's about the marketing. It's about the distribution. It's about, this whole infrastructure that is very intricate, and everything has to work.
Yeah, and I think if as a designer or as an engineer, if you can kind of embed yourself in as much of that as possible, or at least kind of upskill yourself in terms of what's going on outside of your remit, and how what you're doing relates to what someone over there is doing, or how it affects this department. It sounds like that's what you're saying in terms of that's going to present more opportunities.
It's holistic,
to you,
right? It's a team sport, right? I can't just be working in my silo. I have to be aware of the impacts that my decisions make on not only in users, but the factory, the business, the stakeholders, my colleagues. It is one of my former professors, Alan Chachanoff, has a quote about design is about consequences, right? And as when you are in mass production, you are multiplying those consequences millions of times, right? So a small part becomes a big impact. And when you truly kind of embed that in your DNA as a designer, I'm making impact. You start really trying to pull out, well, what does this mean down the road? What does this mean for the business? What does this mean for our consumers, right? So that you aren't just filling a brief with ideas. You are truly thinking through those ideas at a holistic level. That is, to me, a successful design is a design that incorporates all of those different needs and constituencies to the point where everyone has a positive outcome.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Well, look, we're rapidly approaching time, but just very quickly, if you can, I mean, do you have any kind of a favorite design story, either because it went really well, or maybe it went terribly wrong, but it presented a great learning opportunity for you that you could share?
I'll tell a fun story of Mr. Kohler, Herb Kohler, who is a character. He unfortunately passed away this last year, but anyone who interacted with him and had the opportunity to work with him at Kohler has stories, and I have a few. One of my favorites is designing a toilet seat, and when you, we had all of this amazing technology where we had like a pressure mapping, pad, and we tested all these people's butts and sort of understood where their sits bones are and created, surfacing. I'm an alias doing the surfacing. And then I'm like, we made this beautiful model showing to Mr. Kohler. And of course he's got to try it out. And so he sits on it with his pants on. And then I go down and he's like, it's not right here. And then I'm going down with a Surform blade and carving, coming back, he's going through other things, and then he's like, oh no, it's a little bit here, and then I'm going back. Finally, after a few iterations, I'm going to take my pants off. You guys can stay or you can leave.
The ultimate test.
And then we tested it, and I still to this day
it's scarred in your retinas.
This is Mr. Kohler's butt.
Yeah. By pants, you mean trousers, I presume, just for the...
Yes, trousers, yes. He took off, he had a beautiful suit.
Yeah.
That was now covered in yellow foam because of the dust that I had created. And then he took them off and planted his butt on the seat.
Wow, there's quite some user test, isn't it? So
yes, but this is what was funny is we did all of this user testing, and it kind of went out the door. Yeah, because the man who was signing the checks, it's going to be his butt that has to be.
Yeah, absolutely. But you said earlier on in the conversation that all the designs had passed by him, but literally passed.
They
by
passed,
his backside.
yes.
Yeah.
In many ways.
Wonderful. Well, look, favorite, we always ask this at the end as well, kind of quick fire questions. So, favorite books that you're reading or listening to at the moment?
I love the book Sapiens.
Okay.
And it is, basically a history of humanity, and it's all about storytelling and about how we are the only animal that tells stories, and that storytelling is fundamental to who we are as a species and as a culture. And it is tremendously instructive for me as a storyteller and understanding kind of society.
Wonderful. And are you listening to any podcasts at the moment?
Honestly, not many interesting ones. I usually listen to like either comedy podcasts or political podcasts, but I need to get into more design-oriented podcasts because that'd be a lot more interesting for me.
Well, as we said earlier,
actually, that's what I like. I love astrophysics, and so there's a Cool Worlds podcast. There's a English professor of astrophysics at the Columbia University. It's called Cool World, and it's awesome. really interesting.
I will check that out. Yeah, that's brilliant. So, well, wonderful. Well, look, thank you so much for spending the time with me.
Thank you.
We're at the end of the show. It's the time has absolutely flown by. I think we could definitely do a double episode.
I hope I didn't go on too much.
Absolutely not. No. So, well, look, if there's a final kind of parting gift, obviously this is your episode. So, if there's anything you kind of want to leave with the audience, or if there's, basically, how can people get in touch with you? Is LinkedIn probably the best way for them to reach out?
Yeah, LinkedIn is definitely the best way. I'm usually pretty responsive, especially if you're not trying to sell me something. I'm usually pretty responsive. If you're trying to sell me something, I might not respond as quickly, but if you're just reaching out and say hi, that's great.
Awesome. And is there anyone you want to shout out to? I don't know if that's this, but it's on my notes here, so I feel like I should ask. Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know if anyone knows me or has met me and is listening to that. I'd love to hear from you.
Well, we will share the love when the podcast goes live in a few weeks. We'll post it all over LinkedIn. So,
lovely.
Yeah, if you're listening and you've enjoyed the show, get in touch and share the love, because we'd love to hear from you. But William, it's been wonderful speaking to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Speaking with you, Chris.
We'll catch up soon.
All right. Take care.
Thank you for listening. I hope you really enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please like and subscribe and tell all of your friends. In the meantime, just a quick note from me. In addition to hosting this podcast, I'm also the founder of Kodu, a specialist recruitment business focused exclusively on physical product development. For a little over a decade now, I've worked exclusively within physical product design and engineering, helping startups and established brands hire mechanical design and development talent, from midweight up to C-suite. I've worked in consumer electronics, e-bikes, femtech, medical devices, design consultancy, basically user-focused stuff. And it's the wonderful people I've met over the years that have inspired me to create this podcast. If you'd like to learn more about Kodu and how we work, please head over to teamkodu.com or message me, Chris Whyte, on LinkedIn. Thanks again for listening.